we'll officially start. So again, I'd like to thank Dr. Mitchell for participating in today's session. I'm going to do just a very brief introduction of CCSA Study Abroad and some of the programs that we're offering. And then we have Dr. Mitchell that's willingly volunteered to do a question and answer session about his upcoming course on our London Midsummer program. So with that being said, CCSA is a study abroad provider. We really have a specialty of short-term study abroad programs that have no language requirement. So we primarily travel to English-speaking countries, primarily the UK, which would be London, Scotland, Ireland. Our Ireland program is popular, and then also Australia and New Zealand over the winter term. And then, of course, as you'll find out, new this year are domestic programs to New York and Colorado. But we do specialize in short-term 2-week to 4-week programs. And we really bridge the gap between experiential education. So it's hands-on. We bring your textbook to life. Rather than reading about these sites, you're actually experiencing them firsthand on site. So here's our CCSA team. I'm Stephen. I am the Outreach and Operations Coordinator. So any questions you may have about the application process, I'm happy to address those, and just getting you started with the process, I'll be your point of contact. Anything financial related, if you have scholarship questions or questions about how to use your financial aid, Robert will be your point of contact. And then Robin is our program coordinator. So if you want to do any independent travel, she'll be your point person for those types of inquiries. And looking ahead to summer 2021, we have several exciting opportunities on the docket. And these programs typically run year to year. You can see we have 2 programs to Belize, a program to Ireland, to London, and then new this year are domestic programs to New York, the New York experience in the American West, which will be going to Colorado, and then our Scotland program. Within each program, we offer a variety of courses. So you can see kind of the focus majors that are listed on here. This is not all of the majors. Specifically under London Midsummer, there's Dr. Mitchell's psychology course, which should be listed. We'll edit that. We have, and this is another important note to make, that if you don't see your major listed, it doesn't mean that you can't take that course. You can study outside of your major, given you meet the prerequisites of the specific course. So that shouldn't be something that necessarily deters you. And as you can see, we strive to offer as many courses for a variety of majors as we can. And then looking ahead to the winter term, you'll see our 4 programs on the docket. We have a 2-week program to London Winter. Our London and Dublin program will spend a week in London and then a week in Dublin. And then we have our New Zealand program, which will be 2 weeks to New Zealand. And these depart on typically the 27th, a couple days after Christmas, until January 9th. And you can see again the majors that we focus on, but if you don't see your major, doesn't mean you can't take that course. These are good condensed experiences for 3 credits. So it's a great way to earn credits quickly over your winter break. And as you look over the courses we offer, we really encourage you to meet with your academic advisor or your study abroad advisor on your campus, just to make sure the course that you select will transfer toward your degree and that it will transfer appropriately. All of our CCSA programs include accommodation for the duration of the program, all the course-related activities and entrance fees. So if your course requires you to go to the British Museum of Natural History. That entrance would be included, and all other course mandated activities. Those entrance fees are included. In addition, we do our best to provide ground transportation in each site. So for instance, in New York, we'll be providing Metro cards. In London, we provide travel cards, and then Leap cards in Dublin. And those allow you to use their subway system in the tube daily and unlimited amount of times. We do include daily breakfast for our programs, but then we understand that you'll really want to immerse yourself and explore while on site. So you have the flexibility to find and try different cuisines for lunch and dinner each day. But we do typically include a welcome group dinner and then a farewell group dinner at the end of the program. Health and emergency evacuation insurance is included, and then of course 24/7 support. You'll have a faculty member in addition to a CCSA administrator on site. So you'll have 24/7 support. We do, for most of our programs, for all of our programs, we'll offer a group airfare option. So if you want us to book your flights as part of the group, we're happy to do that. For some programs, it is required that you do the group travel. For instance, Australia, because that's such a tricky flight. And the only exception is our New York program, where that will be independent travel. But this is a typical program package for each of our programs. So your next steps after this would be to submit an application. There's no financial commitment. We offer a no-risk refund through March 30th. So you're welcome to start an application. You don't have to put your application fee down until that point. It's just, we're trying to offer flexibility and peace of mind as you begin this process. But the advantage of starting an application this early is that you'll be on our mailing list and we can keep you updated with our programs, which is especially important through this fluid time of travel restrictions and whatnot. So it's really important that you do submit your application early, and there is no financial commitment through March 30th. After that, we encourage you to meet with your advisor on campus, which in your case would be Katie. You just met her. So it'd be your study abroad advisor for your campus, which also includes your financial aid advisor as well, to discuss how your aid would transfer. We do offer scholarships. I, of course, wanted to mention those. We offer 2 through CCSA, the Traveler Scholarship and the Storyteller. So you're welcome to apply for both of those. And then, of course, once again, meet with your financial aid office to discuss any aid that you may have that could transfer to your CCSA program. All of the courses are listed on our website, but if you have a course-specific question, then you're welcome to reach out to the instructor directly, as I'm sure they'd be more than happy to address that. But with that being said, that's a brief overview of CCSA and the programs that we offer. I wanted to move to the Q&A portion with Dr. Mitchell to talk about specifically his course on our London Midsummer program. So I guess to start it off, if you don't mind doing a brief introduction of yourself and then maybe an overview of your upcoming course.
Hi, I'm Bob Mitchell. I'm a professor of animal studies and psychology at EKU. I have taken students to London before to do the Psychology of Dracula course, which I think everyone really enjoyed. We begin the course by reading the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, which is a lot of fun to read. And I think the students get to become aware of how much the psychology of the time influenced what he wrote in the book. So psychology was sort of just developing when he wrote Dracula. So one of the things we'll do when we're in London is try to put some of the things we read into perspective by traveling around London and saying, you know, here's where Dracula was cited. But we're also going to be going to Highgate Cemetery, which was essentially the model for the cemetery in Dracula. And we'll be, before we do the course, we'll do readings in psychology of the time. So you'll get to have a sense of the way different psychologists thought about things like hypnosis and women and sexuality and a whole bunch of other things. So when we're in London, we'll visit the, we hope, Bethlehem, which is, gives a history of how the mad were treated during the time of Dracula. And we'll also go to various museums. We'll do a Jack the Ripper tour. It will be a lot of fun, I think. So, and London is a great place to walk around and take the subway and the bus, and it's just great. So, any questions? Kelsey, you look like you might have a question.
No, it sounds interesting though. It really does.
What's your major, Kelsey?
Graphic design.
Okay, perfect.
So for your the term paper for the course, you might want to do a graphic novelization of your experience in London or something like that related to Dracula. I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
Aaron, are you a student as well?
I was just responding back to you. No, I'm just listening in. I'm a first-time instructor of the CCSA course.
Oh, okay, okay.
So you had mentioned getting around in London, and I had mentioned the Metro cards. That's a question I get asked often from students: is how difficult is it to get to know the subway system through London? Do you care to speak to that?
Sure. I think the students took to the subway after initial anxiety and hesitation, like a duck to water, as they say. So they were sort of irritated with me the first time because we wandered around London walking and went to Buckingham Palace, and they felt what I should have done was taken them to the subway and showed them how to use it. So they were wandering all over the place, and it was very exciting because there's tons of people. And so the students were very surprised, I think a lot of them, by how many people there were moving around in London going from train to train. But the system is very easy to use, and there's maps everywhere, and you can carry your own map around, and usually we all travel together, so it's not a big problem. So I don't think you'll find the London subway system problematic. And the buses are pretty easy too. They just take about 2 to 3 times as long.
Yeah, we have a lot of our students that do our programs are first-time travelers, or they've never been abroad or maybe to London before, which is really great. We're happy to facilitate that. But I do find that a lot of, and I was too, my first trip to London, I was intimidated. Growing up in Kentucky, there's not a subway here that I had to learn. So it can be daunting, but it's very, very simple or easy to.
My students seem to have no trouble figuring it out.
Yeah, and then you return and you realize, I have to worry about my car now. I have to find a parking spot, and suddenly it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
So what do you find the study abroad experience, teaching this course in London, what's the advantage of that versus teaching it on your campus?
Well, obviously, London has incredible museums that students enjoyed. So the first time I went, I took students to the Victoria and Albert Museum to look at their Gothic collection. And the students just were completely enamored of the museum itself. And so after we finished, they just wandered around. It's a huge exhibit space, and there's so many things that they're presenting there. So also, just the feel of London is such a different, it's such an amazing city, and so much of it will remind you of what you were reading in Dracula, so that it ties very nicely to the book. We also do, we go to see the play The Woman in Black, which is a sort of Victorian melodrama, which is a lot of fun. And the students usually enjoy that tremendously and get very involved in the, so we've had students screaming when a ghost appeared and things like that. Anyway, so there's just so much to do. And, who wants to do a Jack the Ripper tour outside of London? I mean, it's just London's the place to do it, and the people that are there know everything about it. I'm hoping we'll also be able to do stuff before we go, showing the Lyceum Theater where Dracula's author worked, so you can get a sense of the kind of place that he did work in, which might have influenced some of the things that he did when he wrote Dracula.
Perfect. Yeah, there's definitely advantages to having it abroad versus here, but that was very well put. So what advice would you have for someone that's considering your course? What would you encourage them to, what's a bit of advice you would have?
One thing is to talk to your relatives and friends to get money to help you pay for the course. Talk to financial aid people and Katie to get more information about scholarships and other ways to get there. Read everything you can about London so you can see what it is you want to do when you have a little bit of time off. A lot of students like to go to the churches and things like that to see them because they're pretty spectacular. Trying to think what else. I'm not sure. I can't think of anything at the moment other than thinking about the financial issues. Obviously, with COVID, you need to also think about getting vaccinated. And so you'd want to do that as soon as you can, which I'm hoping will be sooner rather than later. So.
Yeah, and one thing that came to mind that I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention is to, if you don't have your passport, now is the time to start that process because, of course, because of the pandemic, it has greatly delayed that process. And I recently renewed mine and it took 4 months to
Wow.
receive it back. And so it's significantly delayed. And of course, 4 months from now, we're well past booking airline tickets and things of that nature. So
Right.
very important not to delay that. Excellent. Where did I had a list of questions for you. I was reading off.
Oh, that's okay. One of the things that we didn't get to do in the winter term was go to the Bethlehem Museum of the Mind, which is based on Bedlam, which was Bethlehem, which was the place where the Mad were taken and not treated very well during the Victorian period. So I'm really hoping that will be open because we weren't able to see that the last time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And you've taught previously with CCSA. Yeah. When was that? Which
That
program?
was 2019 winter term.
The winter term. Okay, same thing. So good for you to have that experience. What do you think were some of the, what do you think was the most challenging thing for your students to overcome?
I think wanting to do everything at once.
Yeah.
So many things that they wanted to do, and just the idea of doing some of those things. Whenever they had a spare moment, they wanted to do all these other things, and it was like, well, you can only do so much while you're here. And the theater at the there's a lot of theater available, and so you had to make sure that the students weren't competing with something that they had to do in the course at the same time that some theater program was working. So I know one student ended up going to see Wicked, and she'd done it during a time when we were doing the Jack the Ripper tour. So she ended up taking the Jack the Ripper tour at another time, on her own, just to make sure she'd gotten that done. So yeah, it's hard to get everything in, and you're there for about 2 weeks or just a bit less. And really, it's just so much that's there. It's such a rich heritage. The other thing is just, I don't know how this will be with COVID, but when we were there, I mean, certain things like the British Museum would be mobbed. And so you had to wait in a line that would take at least a half an hour. And when you got there, if you wanted to look at something, there were 500 other people in front of it. And it was just, I told the students, just make sure you see the Rosetta Stone. And they said, yeah, we saw the side of the Rosetta Stone. And I guess, I'm not even sure it's the real Rosetta Stone now that they have on display. They probably have a facsimile, but it's good to see something that looks a lot like the original, Rosetta Stone. So you want to focus on things that not everybody else is going to be looking at, because on the other hand, you want to be in London to see some of the things that everyone else wants to look at.
Yeah.
So.
And that brings up a good point. I get asked oftentimes what students should expect as far as course activities versus some personal explore time, because we understand that, while you're in London, you do want to be able to have some time to yourself. So we generally advise students that they should expect about 2/3 of each day to be mandatory course activities, and then have some, at some point during the day, some personal explore time. But of course, there's the caveat that differs by course and by program. There might be an instance where a course has a mandatory excursion that lasts all day, but then maybe they'll balance that out with an entirely free day or free explore time. But would you say that that's about accurate with your course?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really depended. Sometimes we had something in the morning, afternoon, and evening, but that was because we couldn't schedule it at a time when we had a morning and one of those free. So then they would have just a morning class the next time or something like that.
Yeah.
We could try to balance it out to give people time to go do what they want to do.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to do is be careful when you're traveling around in a big city. I don't think anybody had anything stolen this time, but I know in other places I've been, it's easy for people to steal things. You just want to be very careful when you're wandering around, not to be flaunting your wallet or having your purse open or things like that.
Yeah. So we work with your campus and the respective office on campus to try to ensure that you have the same accommodations that you would have on your normal campus, whatever those may be. So we'll do our best to provide the accommodations on site, whether that's something from extra test time or if there's a physical accommodation that a student would need.
It's such a wonderful experience. I don't think there's been a single student who has not gained something from their study abroad experience. There's an initial sometimes resistance to a different culture, but then, once you're there, you just become engaged by it. And I just think it's good to get those kinds of experiences so you realize the world isn't just, the United States, it's a lot of other places.
Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Mitchell. We appreciate your expertise and insights.
Yes.
And everyone that attended, thanks, Katie, and thank you, Kelsey, for your questions.